Spotify is controversial to say the least. They have, like Netflix at one point, basically cornered the streaming market, the music market. They have become synonymous with music. They have become the de facto label and distributor of all the music that is consumed these days across the board. And like most things, when somebody kind of gets the control and position that they have, they start abusing it. They absolutely start abusing it. So, I mean, if you can't tell, I've never been a fan of Spotify or streaming music in general. I pretty much called how things were going and how they're going now when it first started coming around. Once they got everybody switched to streaming, switch their platforms, give them their money to access the music that they have hoarded, they can do whatever they want, because where else are you going to go to listen to music? Maybe Apple Music, but if you go to Apple Music, they will probably do the same things that Spotify is doing right now. So they've really cornered the market. They put people in these predicament where, like, if you want to listen to music, if you want to have your music collection, you have your playlist, you have to go through them. And that gives them so much power, so much control. And like all things, power corrupts. That is why I'm old school. I download all my music. I even purchase digitally or even on vinyl sometimes music and albums that I really, really love and support and appreciate. If it's from an artist that I like, truly think that they put out some dope shit, I will buy it. I will support them physically, but I need to own my music either by downloading it or by buying a physical copy. Because I knew the moment you stick your whole collection of music to a service, they can do whatever they want with it. And if you listen and read to the terms of service, you don't own anything. You don't own the music. You're renting it. Matter of fact, at any point in time, that music that you are paying to listen to, even if it's an artist, your primary artist, if that is who you are paying to listen to on this service, they can just up and one day remove it. And there's no recourse for you, because in the contract that you are signing and the terms of service, you only lease this music, which never sat right with me. Never sat right with me. I was there at the beginning when we switched over to this digital format. I used to have that giant, binder, CD binder, about that thick, full of CDs. And the moment iPods and everything else that came out, I took those CDs and physically burned them to them. I didn't buy music again. There was no streaming service to purchase at the time, but I took those CDs and burned them digitally. So like I have a entire collection of physical music backed up in multiple places, because I don't trust these streaming services. I don't trust these companies. I don't trust these corporations. We've seen it time and time and time again. The more rope you give it, they will use it to hang you, so to speak. Netflix did it. Spotify is doing it now. And the only thing that can happen is more streaming services going to pop up. But music industry is not the film industry, and it's so much harder to get rights because all of music is pretty much between three record groups: Sony Music, Universal, and Warner. Pretty much own like 90% of music. And once they all kind of colluded, because let's face it, they colluded to support this streaming platform, to put money behind this, to get money back out of it, to license this music to them, you're not going to be able to get this from any other places. TikTok went through it. YouTube went through it. They all got to bend the knee at some point. So the topic of discussion that we're going to talk about, Spotify in particular, which, again, I will reiterate, I am not a fan. I think they are corrupt as fuck. I think they are a scam. I think they steal from people and artists in particular. I think they're the worst aspects of the industry, just amplified. Like, we've had radio, we've had labels. These tactics aren't anything new, but we've never had one central force that controls as much music as them and controls the way you consume music in the way that you did and the way that you do now. At least when you're buying CDs, vinyls, cassettes, whatever, they can't physically remove that from you. But now You have to do what they say. So what are we talking about with Spotify? News broke recently. Basically, Spotify some scammers. Spotify are some scammers. Spotify has been filling your recommendations with fake artists and music it barely pays for, according to in-depth report. Let that sink in. This algorithm that we all, or that people that are signed into Spotify, which is millions upon millions, are all subscribed to, is filling your recommendations with fake artists so that they do not have to pay actual artists that have their music. Let that sink in.
What?
A big part of why I'm not a fan of Spotify and the way they do business, that they say this algorithm is fair and impartial and finds the best music for that person, is the best way to pair music with them, to discover new music. We all know it's not fair. We all know it's not impartial. There's definitely a button that they can push to boost any song that they want. There's definitely been pay to play. They are the new radio stations. At one point, radio was the tastemakers. They were the gateway. If your song wasn't on radio, wasn't getting played by radio, you weren't getting heard on a large scale. And you had to play the game. You either had to pay them, you had to do something to get that push. And since radio is basically dead, it's Spotify playlists. You have to pay them, you have to do something to get that push. Now, obviously, I'm sure there are instances where songs are organically recommended and appear in playlists and actually do lead to significant discovery. But to the degree of what that is and what is actually happening, I doubt that it is as fair and as impartial as they claim it to be. And if this report is anything to go by, not only are artists getting fucked, so are listeners. So here's the article. Who makes the music you're streaming? On some Spotify playlists, it might not be who you think. A bombshell report in Harper's Magazine says that a program called Perfect Fit Content, PFC for short, is stuffing some playlists with cheaply produced content, basically AI. They are probably basically using artificial intelligence to make songs or approximations of songs in certain playlists and feeding that to you and creating fake artists to put that music out. The report goes into great detail, but here's the short version. Rather than give individual artists some much needed exposure in some playlists, Spotify is buying in music from production companies who effectively make musical wallpaper as music that's designed specifically to sound quite like other people's music and to cost Spotify as little as possible. And then Spotify's own employees are giving that music undue prominence and playlists at the expense of other artists. Again, let that sink in. The report is saying Spotify is paying these production companies, which are AI farms pumping out AI music, pennies on the dollar to stream their music. And then employees in Spotify are pushing a button to artificially place these songs into people's playlists so that you're listening to the songs that they're paying pennies for, which they're already paying like fractions of pennies for, as opposed to paying actual artists that make actual music. Again, they are paying AI companies even less than they're paying artists to stream their music, and employees are going in and artificially placing these songs in people's playlists.
Bruh.
Why this is not bigger news, bigger conversation, I do not know. Because to me, that is the most breach of trust, and it has to be illegal in some form, but easily at bare minimum, the biggest breach of trust and respect that I've ever seen in the music industry on this scale. Again, Spotify has hundreds of millions of subscribers and listeners, and they license hundreds of millions of songs and millions of artists and labels and whatnot. But of course, to license that music and stream that music, they have to pay these labels and these artists, which already we've looked at is fractions of a penny per stream. But they are paying, instead of having to pay an artist that money, they are going to an AI company who is producing music and songs at fractions of that price. Bro, what? This has been a topic discussion since the first AI song kind of popped up. People were worried that AI music would start to take over, that it would basically make some kinds of music irrelevant, that it would undercut artists. But time and time again, artists were told and reassured by labels and Spotify that wouldn't happen, that music still matters, that musicians still matter. But here we are. They're paying AI companies to stream AI music over other artists, real life artists. And this was a concern about AI for a long time. Is that AI, in its core, does not create original music. At its core, it takes a amalgamation of different sounds, music, catalogs out there, and creates this monstrosity of a song that is different in certain ways, that interpolates all these different elements into its own song. So it's not original because obviously it's pulling from other sources. There would be no AI songs if there was not songs and musicians to pull from. The question is Spotify giving them the green light, these production companies, the green light to scan and index the songs that they have on their streaming platform to use in the production of these songs? That is another layer that I'm be very interested to see, because if that is the case, they might be in a world of trouble right here. Let's keep this going. That's good for Spotify's bottom line, but because it means even less money is going to musicians. Many music production companies pay a small flat fee without future royalty payments going to the musicians. But as Harper's report argues, it raises worrying questions for all of us who listen to music. So they're not even getting fractions. They're paying one small flat fee to have that song forever. Whereas artists, you have to pay royalty forever, basically. As long as that song is on the platform, as long as it's streaming, you need to license it and you need to pay out royalties. But they're skipping all that, going to these AI production companies and paying one small fee. And it's not costing the AI companies almost anything, because once they built the program, once they built the bot, it can pump out song after song after song after song. The playlists are once primarily designed to be listened to in the background. Think chill instrumental music and lo-fi house. And the music is being pushed into those playlists to make each playlist more profitable, i.e. to make it pay less to musicians. The idea is simple. You pay full royalties if people... No, the idea is simple. Why pay full royalties if people are only half listening? The disrespect is real, bro. The disrespect is real. If I'm an artist, if I'm a musician, and if I'm an independent artist, I understand this is pretty much the only place to have your music streamed and there to have your music heard and discovered, and there is no giant musician union, music union like there is like with the film industry and artists and writers. So it's hard to kind of organize and push back against practices like this. But if I'm an artist, I would be seriously reconsidering my placement and position on Spotify, because if they're doing this to them, it's only a matter of time before they're going to do it to your genre as well. So in essence, they're taking that lo-fi, chill, study music that became very popular on YouTube and other channels like that were instrumental based, but somebody still had to produce, compose, organize this song and put it out there. They're skipping that process. They're just using AI or this production company who I assume is using AI, and they're replicating it and creating their own version of that type of music. Again, why be on Spotify for that type of artist? Those playlists don't like, I know on surface, it seems like, oh, who cares? Nobody listens to that genre. Nobody listens to that playlist. But think about it. Those playlists, those study songs, those lo-fi songs are meant to be played almost hours on end. Hours on end while you're studying, while you're working, while you're doing whatever. It's background layering, background music, background ambience. But those playlists, those songs get played hours. That's why those playlists, those channels make so much money on YouTube, because you play them for hours on end. So you can make a good amount of money by making lo-fi beats, songs, instrumentals for the specific purpose of being listened to in the background. And Spotify saw how much money they're making and said, we're cutting that out. Crazy, man. The problem with that is that Spotify's idea of what constitutes background music is what many of us would just call, well, music, ambient music, classical music, electronica, jazz, lo-fi beats. You get the idea. The reason this is a problem is that there's already tons of ambient, classical, electronica, jazz, lo-fi beats, and other music on Spotify. And if that's being pushed down playlists in favor of music Spotify has bought, specifically because it's generic but cheaper, that's going to damage not just the careers of musicians in those genres, but also the genres themselves. Spotify had long marketed itself as the ultimate platform for discovery, and who was going to get excited about discovering a bunch of stock music? Artists have been sold the idea that streaming was the ultimate meritocracy, that the best would rise to the top because users voted by listening, but the PFC program undermined all this. That's what I just said. I don't know if this is illegal. It feels illegal, but I'm sure in their terms of service, they have some wording, some type of get out of jail kind of clause. But at bare minimum, this is one of the biggest breaches of trust between an artist and a creative and a distributor. Because at the end of the day, Spotify is a distributor, is the distributor. And they do not exist without these creatives and these musicians pumping it with music on a daily basis. We've already talked about this. There's at least 120,000 songs being released per day, over 43 million songs per year. So these creatives, these artists are doing their end. They're pumping this machine, this distribution service with endless amounts of music. And what does Spotify do? They push them down playlists. They go find production companies, fake artists, and they artificially put them in playlists over these real artists, real creators, real musicians who signed a at least moral contract between distributor and artist to be represented in the best way possible, and they screwed them over. If that's not the biggest breach of trust for an artist or a creative or musician, I don't know what else is. If you're not questioning why would I continue to put my music on these platforms, in this platform, I don't know what will do it. I don't know what will do it. It's scummy. It's low down. It's a fuck you to creatives. Because creating music isn't free. It takes time, takes effort, takes a lot of brain power. And to keep feeding this machine music and then for them to deem it worthless, basically, when they promised you will be discovered, you have meritocracy, you have just a chance to be discovered as the next song, when that is clearly not true. I don't really know how you continue or where you go back from there. A line has been crossed, and I don't see how you can go back to the other side. Yes, this is happening to instrumental, ambient type music because it's the most easily copied and replicated, and AI can easily model itself off of songs like that. But this is just the beginning. It's only a matter of time before there's legitimately AI songs out there that can sound like a hit song, that can replace these vocal based songs, these more traditional pop mainstream songs. And if you don't think a company like Spotify would find a way to do that, I'd be second guessing that. Pelly adds, however, that Spotify denies that staffers were encouraged to add PFC to playlists and that playlist editors were discontented with the program. I recommend reading the full piece and the quotes from editors, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they're going to deny. But for me, they don't have enough goodwill for them to stand on. And now there's AI. When you look at Spotify through this lens, its embrace of AI, Spotify boss Daniel Ek, whose net worth is higher than any musician who ever lived, that's crazy, is very excited about it. Starts to look a lot less fun. Is the goal of AI really to improve your listening experience, or is it to stream the musical equivalent of crappy AI images? We know that many AI systems have been trained using what artists and artist organizations would characterize as widespread and blatant copyright infringement in order to churn out copies of the same artist's work. It might not be as good, but it's a damn sight cheaper, which is what I said. It's only a matter of time. Only a matter of time. It's scary. It's scary out here to be an artist. It is. I don't see how you can read articles like this and revelations like this and have trust in the industry and trust in the system that we're currently headed. This is just the beginning. Things are only going to get worse. They're always going to find ways to maximize their dollar and cut out the creatives and the musicians and the individuals in any way, shape, or form they can. And who knows how long this has been going on. This just came out. Who knows what other genres, what else, who knows what else they're doing with playlists that are supposedly fair and balanced and impartial. Again, I don't understand how you can see this as an artist and think things are fine, things are okay, the way that they're headed. I know everybody's unionizing, but at this point, like, I don't see how you can be a musician or an artist and not have a union and allow these giant corporations to kind of dictate each and every term and just take what the shit that they feed you. I don't know how you unionize the amount of people that are making music, but something needs to be done because these companies are absolutely horrible. Horrible for the art form, horrible for the artist, and just horrible for the listener in general. Not every listener is going to care, but like, when you start getting fed AI shitty songs, you will. Think about that though. Like, the hardest problem for most streaming services is there's just not enough content. If you watch Netflix, you watch all these streaming platforms, the main problem is there's just not enough content to feed the insatiable hunger for more content from their audience because it's so easily accessible, because it's so instant. But that's not a problem Spotify has. They get 120,000 songs per day. And these artists are feeding this machine, keeping it alive and making it as profitable and as successful as it is today. And you signed a contract of trust that your songs would be represented fairly, would be given the same chance as every other song out there, and that the algorithm wouldn't fuck them over. But that is exactly what they did. They fucked these artists over. And this is just the start. Absolutely shameful. Shameful, bro. Spotify is one of the worst companies out there, worst corporations out there. The music industry is one of the worst industries to actively be an artist in, just quite honestly. And stories like this just hammer that home. And like, I don't really understand or know what the future is going to look like for music, but it looks grim to say the least. If this is the people and the platforms and companies that are going to be in charge of it. There has to be another way. Somebody has to figure something out.